Condition of our country and its strange and expensive master, the EU, with its non-elected commission. Also, the corporate takeover of a vast range of services, the negative influence of the entire banking sector with its punitive interest rates and money printing, causing debt and devaluation, the destruction of our manufacturing base over decades, expensive, illegal and cruel war, plus the misuse of our justice system. Proper regulation needs implementing, and right now, but not by the present lot, but by way of lawful takeover starting with the banking. Roger's idea, following a deep understanding of banking, of the economy and community living, is to initiate the lawful bank and the alternative monetary system. Please take careful note of Roger's words as they first tell of the benefits of this type of banking, and finally will ask something of us all. To get up and do something with the information, in other words, action. And Roger is no stranger to action. He has tested the do as we say, pay what we tell you system by withdrawing his consent to accept certain bills that are thrust at him in an unlawful manner. The last time got him jailed. But instead of leaving the battlefield, he dusted himself off and got back up, resolute, still learning. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Roger Hayes.
Can everybody hear me at the back? Yes. Okay, that's great. Okay, as some of you will probably know, I was due to speak here on the 9th of July, but was otherwise detained. So my apologies for that. Things beyond our control, as it were. We live in very interesting times, don't we? We're seeing out there that things are changing because of what we are doing. And people talking about the banking, the law, the courts, etc., is having a very significant impact. And I brought just a few bits and pieces to show you today to give evidence to that. Will they change because of it? No, they won't. We have to change them, and that's part of the process for the lawful bank, which I will explain briefly tonight. Now, I'd also apologise a little bit because I'm going to treat you all as guinea pigs tonight because I've just written a presentation, and this is the first time I've ever actually given this particular presentation. The object of the exercise is to simplify the explanation of the lawful bank because it was quite technical earlier on, and I know I was losing some people in the process. So I'm just going to, if you like, brush over most of the technical hoo-ha and just get to the principle of what the lawful bank is, what TAMS is and what the lawful bank is. Interesting today, I'm just going to refer to this particular article because it's just classic, is that everything is being privatised. We now have today's paper talking about tax to drive on the motorway, yeah? And they're going to tax us to drive on the motorway, they're going to tax us to drive on the air roads, they're going to tax us to death, aren't they? And it doesn't matter what you look at, the solution to their problem is always the taxes. So it's slavery by taxation. I don't care what anyone says, if there's anything that they can privatise and add a tax to, that's what they're going to do. In recent, I don't know, did anybody see the Telegraph in the last couple of weeks with regards to the monetary system? Now, you know, I've been talking about an alternative banking system for probably about 5 years now. I know we've had a lot of people talking about alternatives. And a lot of people come up with some good ideas, some good schemes. The big problem that we've got is implementation of them. And that's where I think the lawful bank has got a little bit of a head start because it's something that we can implement a lot easier. And that's the process that we're going through now. But in terms of the Telegraph, what they were saying in that paper was that there is a better way of doing this. And Mervyn King has said, this is the governor of the Bank of England, of all the banking systems there are, the one that we're using is the worst. I mean, you know, it's absolutely incredible. The Bank of England, the governor of the Bank of England is admitting to us that of all the banking systems that are available to us, we are using the worst. And why is that? Because it's not for our benefit. The banking system that we're using is for the benefit of the bankers. Now, the cat is out of the bag, Everybody's now starting to wake up to that whole process. And the politicians and the bankers know full well that they can't ignore it anymore. So all of a sudden, all these universities, professors, and everybody else is coming out of the woodworks. And this is just a recent publication, the IMF working paper on an alternative banking system. Right? And we've been talking about it for 5 years. So what's suddenly happened? Have they suddenly discovered it? Or do they realise that we know what's going on and they can't be embarrassed by not themselves admitting there's a better system? Okay. So that's the first thing. We have got international institutions who are now saying there is a better way of doing this. Okay, that's the first important point. But we also got members of parliament. We've got British universities also coming out with reports about a better way of doing this. We've got a gentleman from... Well, this is the report of the Federal Reserve Bank. I've got a few of these now. This is talking about the financial crisis of 1825. And guess what? It was a bubble. So we've been here before. This is 200 years ago almost. So why is it they haven't learned the lesson? The answer is because they have learned the lesson. They know how to create bubbles and collapse markets because it benefits them. It's quite deliberate. And we know it's quite deliberate now. And because we know and because we're talking about it, because we understand it, and because we are presenting alternatives, they can't ignore us. So we are driving the agenda. I promise you, we are driving the agenda. Yeah. We've got the courts being sent letters from the legal advisors of the Justices Clerks Society telling the courts how to deal with us in the courts. So they're changing their approach in the courts because for the first time ever, the magistrates are a bit shell-shocked because people are coming in and arguing with them. Right? And they just don't know how to deal with this. And of course, they're not going to give up. They can't afford to give up. They've got to keep going. So we've got to be tactically quite clever and astute about how we go about this whole process. We can't anticipate everything. As far as my time, 21 days in prison was very constructive. Took that time to sort of read a lot, write a lot, and as Rob said, came out fighting. So there's another report here. This one is by a member of Parliament. So you've got a couple of members of Parliament who pop in the heads above the parapet. This particular guy is Stephen Baker. How many people in this room have heard of positive money? Okay, now positive money are going around the country at the moment saying effectively what we're saying, but they're doing a very, very good job. They're doing all the glossy brochures and the presentations at university, etc. And their conclusion is that we need an independent monetary committee to handle our money. Well, excuse me, that's what the Bank of England are doing. No, we don't need an independent monetary committee. We need to do it. We need to take back control on that. If you take out a mortgage of 5% for 25 years, you repay your £100,000, but you then pay about another £150,000 to the banks. Yeah? And that, of course, is one of the aspects that causes house prices to inflate. So the problem is not fractional reserve banking. The problem is, one, the interest on the money that's created, and two, when people don't pay back the loans. Yeah? Those are the two problems. So not fractional reserve banking. And there's another issue I haven't actually raised here. Lots of people say we should be backing our money with gold. No. Because who's got all the gold? The bankers. Yeah. So we would be falling into that trap. Again, there's nothing wrong with fiat money. I can create my own money. If I know over the next year I'm going to earn £15,000, I can write an IOU for £15,000 and hand it to somebody on the promise that I will pay that £15,000 either progressively over the year or at the end of the year. And if that person trusts me, right, then they will be prepared to give me the credit, and therefore I have created my own money. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So my fiat, right, the money that I've created, there's nothing wrong with creating our own money conditional upon us being able to repay it back. And of course, half the problem is Because the bankers were making interest on money, they were prepared to lend to anybody. And if the money wasn't paid back, who was actually taking the risk? The bankers or us? We were. Yeah? So the bankers make the profits during the good times, and we foot the bill during the bad times. Totally and utterly corrupt. So what we should do is we should actually get to a system where we make the money during the good times, we manage it properly, and we make sure that we avoid the bad times by avoiding the boom and bust, by making sure that money is issued to us according to the simple principle, no interest, and we pay the money back. All right, so what I've said, in fact, creating new money is essential if an economy is to prosper. So in any community, if you want your community to prosper, you actually need to issue new money, because businesses need new money. Okay, so issuing money, fiat money, is actually a good thing. And of course, it provides for businesses, which in turn provide for products and services, which of course creates jobs, which is what we want. When more money is created and lent out, the economy expands, shrink the money supply, and the economy will follow. So the point is, and I think we all know this, is that whenever the banks issued more and more money, the economy boomed, yeah? Now the government is trying to say at the moment the reason that the economy is failing is because there's a shortage of money. Well, why doesn't the reverse happen? And of course it does happen. So the government coming up with this claim that there's a shortage of money is a falsehood. So the government's claim, therefore, that there's a shortage of money is nothing short of disinformation. There's another word there, isn't there? It's an outrageous lie. Government has the capacity to create as much money as it requires, providing there is a mechanism to claw it back. And of course the government does have a mechanism to claw it back, doesn't it? It can tax us. And it does tax us. Invariably, it's wasting our tax money. The point is, why is the government borrowing the money from the bankers when the government can actually issue its own money? And the answer is because the government is not working for our benefit, the government is working for the benefit of the banks. Now, we currently pay almost £50 billion a year, each and every year, just on the interest on the money that the government borrowed from the banks, which it actually didn't have to do. Now, if the government creates its own money, if it was saving £50 billion a year, our taxes would be going like that, wouldn't they? How much do we supposedly owe now? £1 trillion. And it goes up and up and up and up. All around the world, governments owe money to the banks. Boy, have we been scammed. As far as the clawing back the money, the government has a number of mechanisms. As I say, the government has the capacity to issue as much money as it requires. Some people would turn around and say, well, if the government were to do that, it would cause inflation, right? The government borrows money at interest. That would cause inflation. If money at no interest causes inflation, the point is, as long as the government's not borrowing more money than it needs to do the job effectively. So we are talking about good management as well, aren't we? But I have made the point that we would save ourselves £50 billion per annum in interest payments to the banks, provided they had means to claw it back. All right, I should mention that the other proposal that has been made, which I think is a very good proposal, in fact it's part of the Lawful Bank proposal also, is a transaction tax whenever money is spent. I believe the figure is at 0.25%. If you charged a transaction tax of 0.25% when money is spent, that would raise something like £200 billion a year. So if you spend £100, you would pay 25 pence in a tax or a transaction tax to cover that cost. It's a lot cheaper than the VAT and all the rest of it we're paying. Again, collectively over a period of time, that could replace the whole tax system. And if the government was short of money, you could just raise it from 0.25 to 0.3. So it's a better system of control. But also, if that system was introduced, who would be paying most of the money? The bankers. And the wealthy people would be paying it. As I mentioned, that what is money? Money is a means of exchange. Okay, money is a means of exchange because it's also a means of storing value. So if you have wheat or if you grow a product that you can't store, you need to exchange it for something. So if you exchange it for money, you can put the money in storage, okay? So it's a means of storing value, but there's also a means of account. So if you're a farmer, for example, and people want to know whether they want to do business with you, they say, well, how much are you worth? You don't say, I own a tractor, 3 forks, a bit of straw, a cow, a chicken, a pig. What you do is you convert them all into a monetary value. You add it all up and you say, I'm worth £20,000, and therefore it's a means of account. But also, importantly, it's a means of exchange. Money has no intrinsic value. Fiat money has no intrinsic value. Yeah, it has value if it's transferable into gold or silver, but what's the point? You know, the fiat money works perfectly well, providing you've got something to back it, the government to back it, or an institution to back it, to hold its value. The important thing about money is not to produce too much of it. So if I am able to earn £15,000 a year, what I don't do is write IOUs for £45,000, do I? Because I can't pay £45,000. And what we have got is we have got a banking system that has product or earning capacity of X, and the banks have lent X times 10. And that has a direct consequence of inflating things like property prices. Now, if you buy a house worth £50,000 and you pay it off over a period of 25 years, and all of a sudden it's worth £250,000, most people think they're wealthy. Yeah? But if you've sold it and bought another one, guess what it's going to cost you? £250,000. So it's an illusion. Even though you've got higher equity after 25 years, or you may pay off your mortgage, if you want to go and live in another house, you've still got to buy it for the same price that you've sold your property for. It's an illusion. And what people do, of course, is that they use the equity and they borrow the money. They get themselves in debt, which, of course, is part of the problem. Or, in some cases, people buy the second house or third house. And then you've got some people who can't buy their own homes, and some people have got 3 or 4. So you get the inequalities in society. So the monetary system has a lot to answer for. If money is limited, then commerce is restricted. So we understand that. So there is a requirement to put money into the system. There's nothing wrong with fiat money. There's nothing wrong with lending money, creating it from nothing, conditioned upon it being paid back. But there is a difference between productive commerce and speculation. And again, this is a big mistake in our economy. If you lend for businesses to manufacture things that can be sold overseas, we are earning our keep. But speculation just drives property prices up. And it puts us once again on the treadmill. Because instead of a car costing £5,000, it's costing £10,000. The speculation in our economy is causing prices to rise. 92% of money is lent out for speculation. Only 8% is being lent out for production. That is incredible, right? That the banks, because it's an easy win for them, will lend their money to property speculation, oil speculation, all these sorts of commodity speculation. 92% of the money in circulation is actually being used for speculation, and it's costing us. So when the commodity brokers are making a killing on the increase in the oil prices, who pays the bill? We do. So not only are the banks lending money out for speculation that force prices up, but they're also lending it out with interest attached. Right? So it's not their money, it's our money. They're lending it out for speculation, which we end up paying the bill, and as a direct consequence of the interest, we're paying yet again. It has been estimated that the cumulative impact of interest is that all products are 50% more expensive than they would be without interest. So it plays a significant role in our lives. Yeah? I put it that it adds up to a lot of money going to the banks. That money going direct to the banks should be staying in our pockets. That money going direct to the banks is a direct consequence of the interest that's being charged. And remember, very importantly, they're not lending out their money. It is money that is being created on our deposits. It's our money. All right, what is the impact of interest? Let's consider a game I call commerce, right? Because we all like to play commerce, a lot of us are involved in commerce. If you imagine that in a community, the local people come in and they bring with them their cows and their pigs and their sheep to exchange for chips to play the game of commerce. They brought something to exchange. They can't just play the game unless they've got something to play with, right? So they exchange their cows, pigs, sheep, etc., put them in the barn, walk through the door, get their chips in exchange, and they play commerce. And as they play the game of commerce, there's winners and there's losers. Yeah? That's what commerce is all about. We go into it knowing full well that we're going to sometimes win, sometimes we're going to lose. And in commerce, some people do lose everything. At which point they should go home and apologise to their husbands or wives for losing all the chickens or pigs, whatever. But if, for example, you had 100 people and they'd all brought sufficient to get 20 chips, you'd have 2,000 chips on the table. Yeah? So at the very beginning of the game, 2,000 chips on the table. And those chips would go up and down depending on the hands that you played at any particular time. At the end of the evening, how many chips are on the table? 2,000. So the community doesn't lose any money, any assets to external companies or whatever, yeah? Enter the bankers. Now the banker comes in and says, well, tell you what, I'll bring some nice new chips to the game. I'll bring my own chips and I'll provide the chips that you can use, and I'll provide the pack of cards. Right, and as we all know that the bankers have the 4 aces. And what the bankers say is, tell you what, because I'm organising everything and I'm sort of watching everything that's going on the tables, and I'm dishing out the cards and also using my chips, I will take 1 chip from each one of you at the end of every 10 games. And that's, of course, interest. And people will say, well, 1 chip every 10 games, that doesn't seem a lot. So there's 20 people on the table. 10 games go on. At the end of the 10 games, the banker takes just 20 chips. So your 2,000 chips are down to 1,980, yeah? And nobody's really concerned because they've still got almost 2,000 chips on the table. And then another 10 games, another 20 chips to the banker. 1,980, 1,960, 1,940, 1,900, and the game goes on. Commerce is an eternal game. 1,880, 1,860, 1,840. Do you see what's happening? What did the bankers bring to the game? Nothing. Now, at some point in the game, what happens is the bankers are encouraging some people to actually borrow some of their chips, because they've now got quite a few chips in there. Right, so of the 2,000 chips, they've probably got a couple of hundred. So they're putting those 200 chips back into the game, and everybody who sees the game sees, well, there's still 2,000 chips on the table. They don't see who owns the chips. But because the individuals with a larger number of chips have been given more chips, they can raise the stakes. Yeah? Which means they win more games. And those are the elites. So the bankers are feeding the elites. Meanwhile, the rest of us are getting our chips taken from us. And it's a very slow drip process. But eventually, who ends up with all the chips? The bankers. That's exactly what's going on. But it's worse than that. Because they're not content to just have the 2,000 chips that are backed by the assets that were brought to the barn. They increase the chips discreetly, and next thing you've got 2,000 of their own chips, 4,000 chips, not backed by anything, used to play the game of commerce to our disadvantage. That's what's going on at the moment. We have allowed the bankers to take control of our asset, the money, and they're now using it to skim us of our own money, our own resources. And that's what the principle is. With interest, effectively, we are losing our assets slowly but surely to the bankers. And they won't be happy until they've got the lot. Okay? And they're using other mechanisms to take our money from us. They're privatising the roads, they privatise the oil, they privatise the gas, they privatise the water. They're privatising everything. Every time something gets privatised, we pay more, right? Taxes never go down, they always go up. They juggle them around, but ultimately the net result is that we pay more. The creation of money is essential in order that the economy can actually function. So we know the creation of money is an essential tool. Presently, it's not the government but the banks that issue the nation's money supply through loans. They are distributed as loans because that is at least one way of getting money into the economy. In other words, we've got to get money into the economy, and lending money is a perfectly reasonable way of doing it. So if you've got entrepreneurs who want to borrow money and risk a bit, that's fine. It's a perfectly legitimate way of doing it. And loans are a means of controlling it. So the banks potentially do have a function to play, provided when they are lending money out, they are taking a fee for their services. And also a valuable aspect of the banks is that they could provide an intermediary, the guarantee. They're the ones that chase us up to make sure we repay our money. So there is a game to play. The banks can actually play a part, right, subject to them not being allowed to be too greedy about it. And unfortunately, they've got greedy. They've taken control of the game, and they're now using it to enrich themselves. So money is loaned, is repaid. That's how the money is kept in check, okay? So they put money out, they bring it back in. So there's always a balancing factor. But interest-bearing debt is not the only way that money could be issued, yeah? And this is a very important point. The government could issue each of us with interest-free money to buy houses. The government could do that. 650 members of Parliament could vote a policy in Parliament to issue each and every one of us with money to buy a home conditional upon us paying it back over the next 25 years, interest-free. There would be no losers. We, the people, would benefit at the expense of the bankers. But even the bankers wouldn't have to lose because they could take a fee for acting as the guarantor or the middleman. Yeah? So we would all be winners. Why doesn't the government do that? Because the government is not working for us. The government is working for the bankers. Has anybody noticed how many politicians end up working for the banks when they leave office? Yeah? Is that a coincidence? Or, yeah. Is that a coincidence or is that a payoff? It's a payoff, isn't it? If the government issued money to all of us for our first home, interest-free, to buy a new-built home, or to renovate an empty home, the prices of property would fall and we would all benefit. Because our mortgages wouldn't cost us £1,000 a month, they would cost us £500 a month. Yeah? Now, if we were paying £500 a month and not £1,000 a month, we would have more money to pay for taxes if it was necessary. So, in essence, the money that we would have available to pay taxes comfortably is going to the bankers. So again, why isn't the government organising stuff so the government benefits? Because the government's not working for us, the government is working for the bankers. This would have a longer term benefit of putting more money in our pockets, and of course the profits would come from the bankers. At the moment all we're doing is we're feeding the greed of bankers, and that's attributable to the policies that the government is actually enacting. All right, if everyone would like to take a bit of a break.
Just on the desk near the entrance doors, there's some chocolate money, and that's the stuff with the Queen's head on it. So please take a piece and eat one.
Myself, that I've recorded.
All right, sorry about the delay. Technology is brilliant when it works, but when it doesn't, of course, it drives you all mad. I'm just going to go through some of the features of the Lawful Bank because, as I said before, I found that the previous presentation was technically a bit too much. How's that? That's better, isn't it? Yes, okay. So, it doesn't cover all the points, but it covers some key points, and if you can grasp some of them, we can progress it over a period of time, and we'll be doing this on the internet as well. But as I've said, I think it's important that we get as many people involved, and importantly, on the 24th of November, there will be a full presentation in Stoke-on-Trent, so if you can make that trip, I think it will be worthwhile, okay? All right, so a new monetary system. The point being, by changing the means of distributing money, we can build a better economy with the same incentives to work hard. Those of us, one heard, we can actually go out and work hard. But with significant improvements, the system would create significant improvements, re the levels of poverty. It is possible to eliminate poverty. It's not difficult. By changing the banking system, we can eliminate poverty without removing the incentives for those of us who want to work hard. Okay? The simple problem is that our economy is being driven by greed and self-interest, isn't it? That's the problem we've got, and that's what we've got to remove. At the moment, the economy is serving a small minority at the expense of the rest of us. Because the crooks have taken control of our politicians, are doing nothing about it. The politicians are involved, they are now part of the problem. So if people think that by engaging in the red, the blue or the yellow team is going to change anything, I'm sorry, but I think you are sadly delusioned. Right? The only way that change is going to come about is if we take back control. What did Gandhi say? He said, if you want to see change, be the change. So we are the change, okay? And I suggest that the politicians are either too crooked to care or too stupid to understand, yeah? They're not stupid, they know exactly what they're doing. They're too crooked to care, yeah? Right, the Lawful Bank cuts right to the heart of the problem and gradually transfers the control of the issuance of the nation's money out of the control of the cartels and into the hands of the people. That's the principle behind what the Lawful Bank actually does. Back in our hands where it should be. The Lawful Bank will issue new money as follows, and this is exactly along the same lines initially as Bristol pounds, Shroud pounds, etc., right? We will simply exchange one sovereignty pound for £1 sterling. The pound sterling will be retired, and that effectively means that what we're doing is we're backing a new currency with their currency. Yeah, that's the initial stage. So things are stage by stage. So what you should be able to do is walk into your local shop in your local communities and offer to pay with sovereignty pounds as opposed to pound sterling. And of course, initially they're going to turn around and say, well, what's it about? Can you guarantee it? And we'll say, yes, we can. You can take one of these sovereignty pounds down to a Lawful Bank branch and exchange it for pound sterling if you want. So the initial guarantee is there. But also what we want to start doing is this. We want to start asking people to take sovereignty pounds and give a discount, exchanging for example, your haircut, instead of paying £10 sterling, pay £9 sterling and £1 in sovereignty money. Yeah. So effectively, what happens eventually is that you're actually using sovereignty money as real money without it being backed by sterling. That's the next stage of the process. So we're actually almost treating it like a discount. So we're asking people to give a discount against being paid 1 or 10% of their fee, their service, their product in sovereignty pounds. Yeah. Now the truth is, it's not really a discount because they will be able to spend that. So we get the community used to using sovereignty pounds by backing it with sterling, and eventually, when we start issuing our own money, right, over and above sterling, we're doing it on the back of people being prepared to give a 10% discount. So that actually starts using money. Now there's another mechanism that we can use. I've already said I'm prepared to work one day in 3 months and be paid entirely with sovereignty pounds. Yeah? Now that means that I'm exchanging my labels for sovereignty pounds. And if we can encourage people to do that, it means again that our currency will start to actually have real value without it being backed by sterling. Right? So you can see it's a slow process of change. Yeah. Now, there's another thing that we can also do, and it's where people are volunteering, and there's lots of people doing volunteering out there. We would invite the people who are actually using their services to pay them in sovereignty pounds, and ask local shopkeepers to, if you like, reward them by accepting those sovereignty pounds as part payment for the services that they've actually given, or products they've been given. So again, there's a number of mechanisms that we can start using to introduce the use of our own money into the system. But ultimately, what we've got to do is we've got to encourage people to start using our currency until it establishes its own value. Yeah. Every citizen will be issued with £250,000 sovereignty pounds to be deposited in their property account, activated upon reaching a critical mass of members. So what we're actually saying to people is, if you back the Lawful Bank, we will issue to every single member £250,000. That's an extraordinary claim, isn't it? So the point is that we are enticing people to sign up. At some point in the future, we will have enough weight, enough numbers to make it work. And we're using £250,000 as an incentive to get involved. You've got nothing to lose. And in fact, what we're actually doing is we're actually taking the wealth of the nation away from the current bankers, and we're putting it in our hands. Now, this is the way it can work. And again, remember the important aspect of this. It's all about the critical mass. Now, if you've got £250,000 in your bank account and you've got a £100,000 mortgage, what you know is that the money that was lent to you for your mortgage was actually created against your signature. Correct? They didn't have £100,000. They literally just typed it on the screen. So, if you've got a £100,000 mortgage outstanding and you've got £250,000 in your bank account, we will set up accounts on behalf of all the bankers, all the banks, with the Lawful Bank. And you can transfer 100,000 sovereignty pounds from your bank account to Lloyds Bank, Halifax Bank, Barclays Bank, whoever, and literally say, I've paid off my mortgage. And you can send them a letter to that effect. What they're going to say is, but you just made that money out of nothing. And we're going to say, but that's what you did. And that's exactly what they've done.
What happens to the currency that you've taken, so the currency worth filling in? You said it could be retired.
Okay, well, at local level, money that's retired, the local community will look after that money, okay? Now, I offer the advice to anybody is that if in a local community you've got a lawful bank and you're taking money on behalf of other people, where would you put it for safekeeping? In the bank. So what is actually happening is that we're transferring the liability to the bankers. They owe us, yeah, okay? But those technical things for another day, okay? But that's part of the process, yeah? So we have an ability to pay off the mortgages, but also we have the ability, right, to buy properties with this new money. The critical mass is an important part of the agenda. Now, using fractional reserve banking, old money will be exchanged for new, yeah? And the new money bank will create additional credit. So the principle is that if you bring £100 sterling to a lawful bank, it will be exchanged for sovereignty pounds. Yeah? So it's being bought and sold. There's a contract between the buyer and the seller. You are effectively agreeing under contract to sell to the lawful bank £100 sterling in exchange for £100 sovereignty. The contract is also that it will be reversed if you want to do so. So that's the arrangement. The reason that we do that is because we cannot accept for deposit pound sterling, because then we are subject to the FSA. Now, how many people know that on the website, the FSA website, it says we have not authorised the lawful bank? Did you know that? Okay, so the lawful bank has been recognised by the FSA, and what they said was, we have not authorised the lawful bank. Woohoo! What they're also saying is, guess what? It's not unlegal. They're not saying it's illegal, they're just saying we haven't authorised it. And we're saying, that's fine, guys, because we don't need your authorisation, because we're not using your money. We're using our own currency. Now, it's a bit like, if I started to take in Mickey Mouse money or Monopoly money and deposit, do you think they'd arrest me and take me to jail? No. Because it's not legitimate tender, isn't it? It's not legal tender. So we're actually not committing any offences under their system because we're not using their money. And the proof is, of course, if you're going on holiday, you can go and sell sterling for dollars or euros or anything you want. They're not licensed, are they? And the point is, they're actually just selling money. So if you go down to your local collectors and you can buy old coins, yeah, you can buy that for pounds sterling, can't you? Again, it's just a simple buy and sell contract. So it's not against the law. So we can't actually accept on deposit pounds sterling because that would be against the law, but we can accept our own money. New credit. We want to create new credit because we want to create money and we want to be able to spend it into the economy. The first £10,000 that you bring over to the lawful bank will be exchanged at 10 to 1. So that will create new money, the rate of £100,000. Then it goes down to 9 to 1, 8 to 1, etc. The net result being is that if you transferred £100,000 to the lawful bank, you end up in liquidity terms with 550 lawful bank money. That's what you end up with. That is designed as an incentive for money to bring them pound sterling over, to retire pound sterling and to replace it with their own money. This money can only be spent in our system. Yeah? So that's why it's important to start using our money by paying 10% of your haircut with sovereign money. So eventually people will start to use the money and those ratios will go up. That's the job that we've got to do. How many people in this room have got £100,000 to transfer from their current bank account? Exactly, because they've already got all our money, haven't they? But if you're a very, very wealthy individual, there's a good chance that you will want to take advantage of this, especially when the critical mass of people is growing. Now, a wealthy individual could transfer £100,000 and get the equivalent of £550,000 in lawful bank money. And then to take advantage of the next £100,000, they're going to need one of ours, right, to do a deal with. In other words, they potentially can give us £100,000. We can bring that £100,000 over. And of course, the contract between us would provide that we can hand some of it back. So wealthy people could benefit. So we're actually got to encourage wealthy people to bring their money over. What happens after we're in control is another matter, because when we're in control, when we've got a proper democracy, we can organise the distribution of money as we feel is suitable, okay? The important point about this is the system is designed to make poor people wealthier than they were before. So we are bringing money into the system, we are creating new liquidity, and a lot of that new liquidity is ending up in the hands of ordinary people, yeah? All corporate funds will be exchanged at par. Yeah, so it's 1 for 1 for the corporations. But the corporations will have a time limit. There will be a deadline to get par exchange. So the corporations are not going to act quickly, are they? They're going to be sitting on the fence saying, we don't want to get involved in this because it's going to cost us big time. And it will cost them eventually. There's no choice. Eventually it will cost the corporations. Because I don't know about you guys, but I am sick and tired of being ripped off by the gas companies. I am sick and tired about being ripped off by the electricity and the water companies and every other corporation. I'm getting sick and tired of being ripped off. So it's our turn to take back control and organise the things around our requirements. So what we will do is we will give them a deadline. If they bring their money from the sterling system into our system, earlier on we will exchange it at par. But beyond a certain date, we will exchange it at 90%. Then 80%, 70%, 60%. Eventually, and some will hang on, eventually their money will become worthless, right? Because when they go into the bar to spend their sterling money, the barman will say, we don't accept that here anymore. We only accept lawful bank sovereignty powers. So the control will pass from the people, from the corporations back to the people. It's a process, but it requires the critical mass. It requires the education process, and it requires that we start to use the sovereignty money. Yeah. So that's the process that we're going through. The successful implementation of the lawful bank relies on attracting a critical mass of members. The critical mass is not a specific number. I want you to imagine an island. This is an island. There's nobody living on this island. And 1,000 people turn up one day, lovely sunny day, and arrive on the island. And the first thing they do is they explore the whole of the island. They come back at the end of the day, and lo and behold, they have discovered on this beautiful island all of the resources they need. They've got water coming down the mountain, they've got plenty of trees to cut down and build homes, they've got beaches, they've got bubbling water, which implies either gas or heated pools, whatever. But they find they've got every single resource they need. So those 1,000 people, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to organise themselves so they can harvest those resources, yeah? Some people will want to cut down trees because they like working up the hill. Some people will look after the children. Some people will become medics, and so on and so forth. What we do know about this is that as long as everybody makes a contribution, right, then everybody will benefit. If anybody wants to go and sit on the beach and do nothing all day, that person can be put in a rowing boat and sailing. Everybody makes a contribution on this island, and that's how society is supposed to work. What's also very interesting about this island, there's no shortage of jobs, are there? There's enough work for everybody. And guess what? No money. There's no requirement for money. Now, as the island grows, as it develops, of course, what you would probably find is the guy that cuts the trees at the top of the hill is sick and tired of taking his logs down to the girl who's milking the cow and exchanging his logs for a pint of milk every day. So what he would turn around and say is, I tell you what, I will give you an IOU. I'll take my pint of milk, I'll go and have my tea, and at the end of the month, you bring the IOUs to me, and I will bring back a month's worth of logs for you, right? So between them, they can create money, right? And guess what? It doesn't cost anything. There's no interest involved. It's a mere exchange. And that's what money is. It's a means of exchange. That's what it's supposed to be for. We have been brainwashed into thinking that money itself has value, but it doesn't. It's a means of exchanging the logs for the milk. Now, that's all very well for the milkmaid and the log man. But ideally, you'd want currency that you could actually use anywhere against your production. So, as I said before, if I'm able to work and earn £15,000 a year, I can create £15,000 worth of credit notes for myself, subject to me honouring that commitment. Yeah? It's the same with the log. As long as I cut the prescribed number of logs to meet my IOUs, right, we can create our own money. And ideally, that's exactly what we would do. So on the island, what we would do is we would say, let's create £1,000, for example, sovereignty pounds, for every individual. That's £1 million. Yeah? And we give £1,000 to everybody. Everybody has the benefit of using £1,000. Nobody's the worse off. Everybody is benefiting because they got the convenience of money. That's the way the system should work. And on our island, we've got gas, we've got water, we've got electricity, we've got all the resources. Are we going to sell those to a few people in the island? Are we? Hell. Are we going to give away control of those resources, those essential resources? We'd be mad to do that. What have we done? That's exactly what we've done in this country. That's what's happened around the world. The elites have got a system going. They're now even privatising our own roads. Would we privatise the roads on our island? Of course we would. They're there for the use of the people. The gas, the water, electricity is a natural resource. It's an essential requirement to live a normal life. And because we have access to all the resources, we would all benefit. Yeah? So £1,000 is distributed to every one of us. And those people who want to sit on the beach and do bugger all will eventually spend all their money, right? and find they have no more money to spend until they go out and make a contribution and earn some money. That's the way the system should work. Now, if a rowing boat arrived at the island and it was a man with a suit and a black briefcase and saying, I'm a banker, what do you think that we would tell him to do? Row your boat. Because what we would not allow that banker to do is we would not allow him to create the £1 million and lend us that money. We wouldn't allow him to take control of the issuance of money, would we? Nor would we allow anybody to control our water, gas or electricity, because we're not stupid. Although we have been a little bit daft, haven't we? So the island community is, if you like, an example of how the United Kingdom could work. So on our island, the critical mass is probably about 500 people. That's probably enough people to work 3 days a week, to access the resources, to harvest the resources, to actually benefit the whole community. And nobody's on the beach, albeit that we're working a 3-day week, not a 5-day week, and we're not slaving to pay the interest on the money the banker created in the first place. Okay? So the critical mass for our system in the United Kingdom is going to be a higher number. And the reason it's a higher number is because we are competing in an already established economy. And we have to be able to buy all the essential resources we need from others in our system. Yeah? So it's a key point. So again, our critical mass working together, it's a crucial part of the element that we're talking about here, is that we are going to set up an account in the Lawful Bank for the gas company, the electricity company, and the water company. Yeah? So when you bring £100 sterling over, and we exchange it for £1,000 sovereignty pounds, yeah, and you get your electricity, gas, and water bill for £1,000, you are going to transfer £1,000 sovereignty pounds to the gas, electricity, and the water company, and you're going to say, I've paid the bill. And they're going to say, but you just created that money out of nothing. And we're going to say, well, everybody's doing it. It's the bank, it's the craze. Now, what they're going to say is, well, we're not going to accept your money, yeah, because we don't want to. And we're going to say, well, this is a democracy here, and we're paying you, and there's a lot of us. In fact, there's 1 million households now using Lawful Bank money. And if you're not happy, you're going to have to take us all to court. Which one do you want first? You see the powers of the numbers. Is that when they start dealing with a large number of people all doing the same thing in unison, they can't deal with it. Do you remember the riots last year? What happened with the police? They backed down because they couldn't control the numbers. Our situation is it will be peaceful, will be lawful, we'll be doing stuff together, and they won't be able to cope. How long do you think it would take them in the courts if they got 1 million households they're trying to sue? We can keep them in the courts for 100 years. Okay. Besides, why won't they accept our money? Because their staff would be prepared to accept the money. Because their staff, once they've signed up to the Lawful Bank, will get £250,000 sovereignty pounds credit in their bank account. What's to lose? And even to the point where we can say to Lawful Bank people working for the gas company, the electricity company, and the water company, how about you just accept 10% of your wage initially in Lawful Bank money? Do you see the way it's going? So it's a process. Everybody has to benefit. Everybody can actually win on this. Even the oil company, gas company, and the water company don't necessarily have to lose out, because they still get paid and they can still use that money. So the only people losing out are the bankers. Now, interestingly enough, because we lend money interest-free, because we create our own liquidity, we can actually lend to these companies as well. So it's a win-win-win situation for everybody, with the exception of the bankers. Okay, so as I've said, that the incentive of £250,000 is there. That is the carrot, isn't it? It's a temptation for people to actually buy into the system. They have got nothing to lose. Here's the point. If you back the Lawful Bank, if you get behind the concept of the Lawful Bank, you are credited with £250,000, and the system will actually have that money in your account, waiting for the critical mass to be formed, so the incentive is there. You do that, or you stick with the old system and remain poor, and you're going to get poorer and poorer. And remember, as these taxes start kicking in, right, we're going to be in a position where they will start accepting part payment in our money because there's no alternative. So how can the creation of this new money be justified? Right? There is nothing wrong with the creation of new money. They do it all the time. We showed you the chart before. In 1979 there was X, now there's 3X. So creating money is a perfectly legitimate exercise. And there's no law against it. And that's quite fascinating, isn't it? There is actually no law that says that we can't create our own money. The key point is its acceptance. And that's what we're working on. Getting people to slowly start accepting receipt of sovereignty pounds. There is another important thing about when you create money. There has to be a system of clawback. Yeah? So you can't create money willy-nilly. You have to have a means by which that's clawed back. And what we do in the Lawful Bank is we do actually charge a transaction fee of 0.25%. There is no PAYE. That's a nonsense. That's a control tool. Is it not ridiculous that the employer pays somebody £100 and then takes some of it back to give to the government? It's a nonsense, isn't it? Why don't they just tax the company? The reason why they do that is because it's a control mechanism. It's how they control each other's individually. So there is no PAYE in our system. All taxes are affected through the movement of money. The more money you spend, the more taxes you pay. The less you spend, the less you pay. But there is another element here, which is money sitting in a bank account doing nothing. If you are sitting on money in a bank account, right, it's not doing anybody any good. And if you're not using it, what's the point in having it? So the psychology of owning money will change gradually. Because what we will also do is introduce 0.25% on tax on money that's not being used. So even those people who are sitting there with a great deal of money will be paying a tax. So slowly but surely, the process will be that people will have more than enough money to pay for their own resources and put money into pension fund. And what they won't find themselves doing is leaving a massive inheritance to their children, which only spoils them anyway. And besides, they won't need it because they will be getting £250,000 in their bank account when they need to buy a home. So you see where the whole process is going. By the way, that £250,000 is paid between the age of 25 and 65. At the age of 65, we're trying to build in a pension scheme, so you actually get a pension scheme instead of the home thing. There is something else about the £250,000, right? Is having given you £250,000, you have to pay it back. But you won't have to pay it back out of your wages year on year. You pay it back on death. Yeah? So the money goes back to the system, and it's therefore available for the next lot of people who want their first home. So follow that one through. There is nothing wrong with issuing money, providing everybody gets the same amount of money. Remember the island, £1,000 for every islander. Nobody loses out. So everybody gets £250,000 from the age of 25. But to make sure the system balances, that money has to be paid back into the system to be available for the next lot of people. So the way we would organise it is on your death, your estate will pay back the £250,000. Okay? I know a lot of people find that difficult. Where's that money come from? And of course the point is, anybody can create money out of nothing, providing it's paid back to the system. It does not cost anything to join the Lawful Bank, so the incentive is there to sign up. It requires only that you agree to abide by the Constitution, which includes an agreement to accept the jurisdiction of our common law courts. So we're saying to you that if you want the benefit of the Lawful Bank, we expect every single individual to respect the common law and agree to the jurisdiction of our common law courts. So if you defraud somebody, you have contracted with the system to be taken to our common law courts. So this is the first step to creating our own jurisdiction. Yeah? And that's the first step to creating alternative governance. Because what we're effectively doing is we're effectively saying that we agree, for the benefits of this new system, to subject ourselves to the jurisdiction of the courts under common law, which is a problem that we've got anyway, because they no longer uphold the law, do they? At the moment, they're just inflicting legislation on us. The agreement to accept the jurisdiction of our common law courts provides the basis of a legislative programme and the foundation for alternative government. So everything I've said tonight is leading in a specific direction. It's leading towards alternative monetary system, but it's also leading towards alternative governance. And we must do that with consent. So what we're effectively doing is we're flipping the pyramid. The people are going from the bottom to the top. Now, a few people have asked about the Committee of 100, made some comments about it. As I say, I've not given you the full Lawful Bank presentation tonight because, as I say, I think people got, overwhelmed with the detail. So I think I've given you enough tonight. But let me explain the Committee of 100, the purpose of the Committee of 100. It's a chicken or egg situation. We've actually called for people to put themselves forward to represent a department. So I've put myself forward to represent the Lawful Bank, the creation of the new monetary system. And I'm inviting people to assist me with that process. And I've had a conversation with a number of people so that we can actually, if you like, get the balance of it right. Because I will make mistakes, everyone will make mistakes. So there's a committee being formed around my volunteering to actually be in charge of that department. I have set an agenda that I will have a working Lawful Bank by the 1st of May. Eventually, I will be voted into that position by the Committee of 100. And the Committee of 100 will be elected by local people. So once you start joining the Lawful Bank, we start making the groups up. And what happens is you've got one Lawful Bank joined with the next Lawful Bank and the next and next. So you start having the groups form, and they will form a council, and the council will actually elect their representative to be on the Committee of 100. So the Committee of 100 will eventually fall into a system of governance. Yeah. Now, what we're proposing, and again, this is probably a couple of our talk about how we actually are proposing to start introducing governance itself, because we believe that we need to start saying we are moving beyond party politics. We want to start moving towards policy politics. In other words, we will issue policies, we will publish them on the internet, and the Committee of 100, if you like, will adopt those policies, put them on the internet, and it allows every single individual to have their say about whether those policies are right, wrong, or should be changed. So the idea is to actually open the doors to everybody and anybody who wants to actually make a contribution to the way a government should form, to get involved. Yeah. So that invitation is open to anybody here and now. If you want to get involved, if you want to make changes, don't complain about the system. Get involved and help to actually format it. Now, the next Committee of 100 meeting is on the 3rd of November in Manchester. We've already had 2 meetings. We've had 2 very good meetings, one in Manchester, one in London. People have come there and people have said, I will look after this project. We've got somebody who's actually putting forward a proposal for alternative energy. And I keep saying, I've heard all about these claims for alternative energy. Show me the switch. Yeah. So he's offered to bring a machine to the next meeting so we can actually look at alternative energies. Now, if this guy achieves the agenda, he's got a group, I think he's got about 6 people working with him now. And I do know around the country there's lots of people who've said they've got alternative energy systems. I keep saying, well, show me the switch, right? If we get this system up and running, it is our intention to start putting these into people's homes, yeah? And again, that is a mechanism through which, the community can start taking back control. We already have the mechanism of being able to pay the gas, electricity and water companies with their own liquidity and cause them havoc in the courts if they want to take us on. But essentially, I believe that we should be able to get to the point where we have our own energy systems, which will come through from the Committee of 100. So you get the impression that what we're doing is we're actually trying to take the change, create the change, and be the change. And as I say, you have an opportunity now to get involved. The underlying principle being, of course, that the British people have a right to govern ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we've got to do. I'd just like to point out 3 websites. If you are not a member of the British Constitution Group, the website is allthews.thebcgroup.org.uk. I've taken all the dots out. Do you know why? Because it automatically changes to blue. Do you notice that when you do a www? And you can't see on the back of the screen, so I've left the dots out. If you're not a member of the BC Group, we'd ask you to join. We ask for a contribution of £1 per month, which helps us, keep the thing on the road. We also ask you to go and register for lawfulbank.com, because that's the means by which we communicate to people and start to put the groups together. There is no charge. And we also, I think we've now got the Magna-Carta 2015 website up and running. The object of the exercise is to get out there and tell people that we want to govern ourselves, and Magna-Carta is the umbrella to do that. So if you would visit those websites and sign up and join those, I'd be greatly appreciative. Now, does anybody have any questions?
How do you stop devaluing when we all get this credit amount into our account? If we all got a similar amount at a similar time, we all want to spend it.
Okay, the £250,000 can only be spent on a new build home to start with. So what happens when you have an increased supply of a product? It brings the value down, doesn't it? If that money was being spent on existing house stock, it would cause inflation. Because initially it's only being spent on new build homes, it will bring the price of properties down, because what will happen is that families who are renting will move out of rented accommodation and they will move into their own home. They won't be paying a mortgage and they won't be paying a rent, because the £250,000 only has to be paid back on death. So it's a lifetime loan, and there's nothing wrong with a lifetime loan. And because we all get the same £250,000, so that will not cause any inflation. The other side, where you're creating 10 to 1, that's what they do anyway. The difference between their system and our system is when they create liquidity on the back of your deposit, 10 to 1 liquidity, they lend it into the system at interest. We own it at no interest. So it actually has a less inflationary implication. Okay, that's the second point. The third point is that as long as we are replacing only as much money as we're bringing over, we are just replicating their money, and their system. We're not actually increasing. And as long as we don't create any more money that's in their system, then we won't actually force prices up either. So it's about having that right balance. Their system will diminish as our increases. So there will not be a larger pool of funds, because when you take £100 out of their system, they're supposed to reduce the amount of money in circulation by the same. That's what their system is supposed to do. So we're only just duplicating. So what we're doing is we're transferring the wealth from their system to our system. And particularly with the use of the properties and the £250,000, what is actually happening is that we will have our own land registry. We will register those mortgages on our registry, and we will not recognise their land registry. So when they turn around and say there's a mortgage on this property, we'll say, where's that say? We say, they will say in our land registry. We'll say, no, not in ours. We will duplicate everything they've done to us, we will do to them. And that's the way we take control. Stop using their system. Stop doing it the way they want us to do it. Start doing it the way we want to do it. And as long as we understand that we all benefit equally, there are no losers. Okay? Any more questions?
I want to import my Rockford cheese.
How do you import your Rockford cheese? Okay. There are 2 parallel systems. Initially...
Well, we're going to snuff one out.
We've got to start somewhere, and so initially for importing stuff, we will have to actually use pound sterling to import stock. Let me tell you about Greece at the moment. If the Greeks wanted to take back control of their own economy, all they would do is issue their own Greek money again, drachmas again, right? And if you want to go on holiday to Greece, you would have to be prepared to take drachmas in exchange for pound sterling, and they would then use the pound sterling to buy stuff from us. Okay, so there's nothing magic about it. It's just a case of the Greek people have got to decide we're going to use drachmas, we're not going to use the euros, and that's effectively what we've got to do. We've got to get the people of this country to say we're going to back our system and stop backing their system, because their system isn't doing us any benefits. Practically. Well, Iceland, I don't think we know the full story about Iceland, but certainly I've heard reports that their economy is growing. But I do believe that they've done a deal in order to sort of keep the products coming in. They could, of course, create their own currency and use their stock of fish to exchange. But what they've done is they've decided not to pay back the debts. Slightly different, isn't it? Yeah, so they've given themselves a debt release, but they haven't actually created their own new currency, so they haven't actually gone down that road. So it's a slightly different scenario. So our package is a little bit more detailed.
Yeah, sorry, because I am really ignorant when it comes to financial things. He's talking about, no, it's all right. He's talking about people not contributing.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of, there's some people that do abuse benefit system now, but what about how will for people who are disabled and things like that?
A good society will always look after its disabled people. There's no question about that. And I think the point is that within a society where people are getting a fair deal, most people want to make a contribution. I do know that the lazy and I do know that the feckless, but because the control is back at local community level, the local community, they will deal with those people who are lazy and feckless. Okay.
In the transition period, I want it to be difficult to help.
It will be a transition period, yeah. But I don't ever see a situation where the elderly, the infirm, and disabled people will be required to make a contribution the same as able-bodied. But a lot of disabled people want to make a contribution as much as they can. So I don't see a problem there.
I'm just wondering if there was.
Yeah. I think there's got to be a big change in the way we think.
Yeah.
There's got to be a big change in the way. I mean, if you get to the position in your life where you actually don't have to save money because the system provides all the way from birth to death, then what's going to happen is people aren't sitting on big nests of money. I mean, who's this guy, Fred Goodwin, with a pension of £700,000 a year? How do you spend £700,000 a year? You can't. It's just sheer greed. And the point is that if you provide the mechanism by which you can actually provide the money resources to build homes, to build cars, there'll be enough bloody Mercedes for us all because we can make them. The shortage of money is a control tool. There is no shortage of money if we want to issue it, providing that we back it up with our own production, our own efforts. It's not rocket science.
Can I just go quite a little bit?
Yeah. Can you, so everyone else can hear your question?
Well, it's a personal plight of mine about my mum's death, but I won't go into my own personal politics. But what I'm really outraged about tonight, and I also think, I think this is a great idea, introduce your own currency. But what really propels me on in my own life is this Liverpool pathways. 1 in 3 people are having hastening induced deaths on the NHS,
yeah.
3-bed blocking. My mother was one of them. She was starved. They refused the drips, refused the treatment. The hospital where we're from, they're getting sued for 15.4 million. This Holocaust is on our doorstep. It's here.
Yeah.
It's worse than the Fourth Reich. People are likening it to the Fourth Reich. Well, at least no, it's worse because they didn't pretend to help. They were pretending to help people. And my concern is how many more of us are going to get killed. And my mother was one of them.
Yeah.
When's this going to stop? What's the government doing about it? What's our town council doing
Well, the
about
government are causing the problem, of course. Once again, the government are backing euthanasia. They're killing people. They're using Liverpool pathway. Has everyone heard of the Liverpool pathway? Okay. All right. Basically, it's a license to kill. Okay. Now, What's interesting about this is my wife is the manager of a nursing home. She looks after the elderly people. She's one of the nicest ladies you ever meet. And they have introduced the Liverpool pathway into the nursing home. And I was involved in helping her do a presentation of the Liverpool pathway. And I've got to be very careful how I discuss something with my wife, because she thinks we're all mad, okay? Although she's slowly starting to get it. And when this Liverpool pathway came in, I went, this is big. And I've actually discussed it with her. And she said, there's nothing wrong with it. This is designed. Now, at Gay's nursing home, you will get the best treatment possible. And the Liverpool pathway is used in her nursing home to look after people, because I know my wife. So but in the hospitals, the doctors are using it to withdraw water. People are dying within days because that's what they're using it for. It's basically a license to kill, and it's wrong.
If you want to read about it, it was in the Daily Mail.
Yes, yeah. I read it, yeah. And I showed that to my wife, and I said, in your nursing home, that's fine, but you can see how people are scammed. Some people think, this is really wonderful. And I went to a presentation, a little pathway, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying nothing, but all these nurses are there saying, they're being induced into thinking it's a good scheme because they don't see the evil. Meanwhile, some of the doctors are being trained how to speed up people's death. Oh, terrible.
We're getting paid, and also just one more thing. What disgusts me is these fat cats that are already paid and worshipped our society because they're a doctor. They've only got degrees like probably half of his era. They're getting rewards and sensitives. We are being billed as the targets. We are nothing more than targets. This is their definition of human resources. We're targets to be got rid of on the NHS because we're bed blocking. 1 in 3 of us are put on this pathways. His dad died on it, my mum died on it.
Shipman was just an experiment.
Yeah, they're making him.
Yeah, I mean, we know the thing is, again, how clever these people are is they say it's supposed to do this, when in fact they're doing the opposite.
What they're saying is, their excuse is the same it's easing people suffering. Excuse me, French, that's a lot of crap. No, it's not. It's easing a bed blocking shortage at the NHS. They're getting sued for millions at the bank near me. The same hospital was on Panorama in 2000. The council are doing nothing about it. They're sweeping it under the carpet. When I went speaking up about it, the council a few months ago was arrested, beaten up for about 2 weeks later. If you speak out in our town, you know about it. I mean, I know what you've done, and I know what you've done for the cause, and you went to prison, and good for you. But if that's what you've got to do, I'll be stand up and be counted. But I'll tell you what, I won't shut my mouth about this Liverpool pathways, because it's absolutely evil.
Well, what else they've done is they've now they created the Gold Award for nursing homes. Yeah. My wife's nursing home got a Gold Award. So what they've done is they are now paying these nursing homes to keep beds open so that they can get people out of the hospitals into these beds, right, where they can have a careful death. Nudge, wink, wink. So,
Can I just say that you were right? When it comes to nursing homes, it's about allowing choice and dignity in death.
Yeah.
It really is.
Some of them are doing the right thing.
It's what's happening at hospital level that's the worry.
Yeah, and I think, and I have first-hand experience of that. And
they don't need to be.
My wife, I know we talk about all the time about what they do for, and look, she has got patients in there who are going to die, 2 or 3 months after entry, and they're there years and years later.
And can I just ask if you could get your wife on side, because
I'm working on
it.
We do the impossible immediately.
My passion is improving care for the elderly, because they are given their lives to society, and we treat them worse. If a kennel treat a dog that you put in while you're on holiday, the way some of them are treated, and it's the big chains of nursing homes that are creaming off the profits for the area managers, the regional managers, the auditors, this, that and the other, instead of the money being spent on good patient care. So if she wants to get involved with changing that, I'll absolutely be right there with her, because it's absolutely criminal.
Can I just make this point, of course, and it's this, is that the reason they're doing this, of course, is they're using the shortage of money, right, to kill people. What we will prove is there's no shortage of money, and therefore the emphasis will move away. Are there any more questions on lawful bank stuff?
I've got one that's pressing me, and forgive me for being a bit ignorant here. I've got a degree or anything like that, so I'll put it in pretty easy terms. You know on about the island, 1,000 people on the island, and the man puts in the wood, and the girl doing the milk, and the man says, I'll give you an hour you for 20 bucks, and give me some milk. And she goes, there you go, and you trade a currency with the IOUs. So what happens at the end of the month, when the woodcut goes, oh, by the way, we haven't any more trees left, sorry. So is it not flawed at that point?
Okay, well, no, because the man has an obligation to provide the goods that he said he was going to provide. Any system, right, is based on the trustworthiness of the people using the system.
Well, initially he's trustworthy, he's going to do what he says, but come the end of the month, there isn't the trees to give the woman.
Well, the point is, you are going to get people who are going to try and cheat the system. Does that mean that we don't do it?
Well, it's not cheating the system, is it? It's
it's
ran out, isn't it?
Well, no. Well, he's not going to cut all the trees down. The principle about any particular environment is you don't cut all your trees down. That's what happened in Norfolk Island, isn't it? They cut all the trees down and eventually all starved to death because they couldn't make boats to go and catch the fish. So the bottom line is you do have a requirement to manage the system so that you're not going to let one guy get carried away and cut all the trees down. The principle is you cut one down, you grow two. Yeah, sustainability. Yeah, and common sense says that you manage your environment. And I'm not talking about global warming now because that's another subject. We'll take this on for another month. Any more questions about the lawful bank?
What provision will be made when when somebody dies and he's a spendthrift or she?
Well, the security on the home, the security for the $250,000 is the home. Yeah. So the principle is, if you are living in a house and you've got that house free of charge, right? There is an obligation to maintain that property, and there is an obligation to pass back into the community that which the community is giving you, right? It's common sense. And let's face it, within your life, if you didn't have to pay a mortgage or a rent, how much would your life improve? You would have more money available to get the repairs done. Would you live in a ramshackle house when you can actually...
Is that house going to pass on the air?
No. If you are given £250,000 to live in a house, on your death, you must pay that $250,000. Your estate must pay it back. It goes back into the system. Your children won't inherit that house because it's not yours to give them. Right? You've had the use of that house. Besides, when they get to 25, they get their own £250,000.
Wow, but the house isn't necessarily worth $250,000. So what about if the surplus has been spent? What provision?
Well, they can only spend £250,000 on the property.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's two elements of the £250,000. You can only live in it, or after the age of 65, somebody can use it in a pension fund. Yeah. So the object of the exercise is nobody actually misses out from birth to death. You get access to the resources, and of course, subject to, on the island, you making a contribution. Now, there's so many extensions of this. You start to think, well, I don't actually have to save any money. I can sort of earn enough, get the jobs done, employ people to fix my houses, do 3 days a week, blah, blah, blah. Because essentially what's happening, all of the resources that are being, if you like, sold, the gas, electricity, water, our resources are being sold to fund these greedy people. There's another word I often use, but we won't in this environment. That money starts to come back to us. What is it? The technology has advanced so massively over 100 years, and we're all still working 5 days a week. Why is there a shortage of money? Because we're being scammed. The money is transferring from advanced technology into the hands of one or two people. We have billionaires living within the same radius as children who can't feed themselves to go to school. It's a nonsense. It's a complete nonsense. So we've got to change the psychology of money. And once we start changing the psychology of money, slowly but surely we'll start to enjoy ourselves. It's about lighten up, guys. The world is not about, fast cars and big houses. It's about having comfortable lifestyles. It's about having access to decent resources and being able to go on a holiday 3 or 4 times a year and working 3 days, not 5. We can improve our lives, but what we've got to do is we've got to put the right system in place, and we have got to make the commitment, because we are the people who are going to change the system. They're not going to do it. Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much, folks. Thank you.
I think you'll agree, absolutely ingenious.